Okay, so today is tools of the job hunting trade, the resume. Given this breakdown that we have for the different weeks, we will make sure to stay on task today. And we want to let you know that the bottom line is that resume getting you interviews? Are you targeting your resume to the job posting before you click submit? If not, this session will help you to understand why targeting your resume is so important and how to do it. We will discuss resume formatting, applicant tracking software, accomplishment statements, and touch briefly on cover letters as well. All right, real quick, let's talk about employment applications. Why do they ask for both an application and a resume? Is it to torture us? Go ahead and type your theories into the chat box. The biggest difference that I draw is that one is a form created by the employer and the other is a marketing document created by you. So always read through the instructions and as much of the application as possible to see what it entails. Give yourself plenty of time. It will take, for an average application, about an hour to complete or more. Plus, you'll need a few hours to target your resume to the job posting, and then another roughly half an hour to draw up a cover letter. Fill out everything in the application. Use not applicable if necessary, but do not leave anything blank. Read the small print. Include your signature confirming accuracy and the truth of information you provided. Keep good records. Each employer is likely going to require you to create at least a password. Write it down, put it in a spreadsheet. Just keep good records however you keep them. This is one of the most common and most agonizing struggles we see in our career lab when people come in. Remember that the application is one of the first impressions that you're going to leave with an employer. All right, you'll notice that the recurring theme here in my message to you today is target every resume every time. Include relevant information only. And after we complete going through this section of Job Club, you should understand key resume basics and basic resume sections, know the importance of targeting, understand your formatting choices and the importance of using the one that's right for you, know what an accomplishment statement is and how it's used to sell your skills and experience. And finally, we'll talk briefly about the advantage of sending a cover letter and the basic content that you'll include. Now, there is no exact formula to resume writing. If there was, you wouldn't need us. It is both an art and a science. Career Force staff offer best practices and strategy advice. Please keep this in mind as you digest our suggestions. The most important thing is that you are comfortable with your resume so that you can confidently sell your skills and background when you're in the interview. The more you read and research, you are bound to find conflicting advice. When this happens, first ask yourself about the context. Is this advice directed to a job seeker of a specific industry or with a certain background? Secondly, ask, is this what's right for me? The only test for our resumes is whether or not they're generating interviews. So where do you start? How do you know how to target the job posting? You take your cues from the employer's posting. Let's take a look at a couple of examples. So how do you figure out what's relevant to the employer? Their job posting. This here is a very short posting, just basically a paragraph or two little ones. In order to target your resume to the job posting, you must study that posting to plan your attack. You'll need to analyze the posting to form your strategy. You could try a couple different things. You could go Google a free word cloud, You can use the website jobscan.co for free 5 scans per month. Or you can do the good old-fashioned method, the manual one that I'll show you here. So in order to target your resume to the job posting, you must study that posting to plan your attack. And here's how I go at it. So I first identify all the action words. And then you can see that I've broken down their paragraphs into a list. That just helps me check things off as I cover them in my resume. Secondly, I go through it another time and I try to identify keywords and phrases important to this occupation, to this particular employer, to this particular role. You'll notice that I did make my own checklist here, and it is fluid, as I may not be able to squeeze all keywords from one of their sentences into just one of my accomplishment statements. Do what works for you. My third step of study and analyze is to look for patterns. For today's purposes, I've used this short example. However, most job postings are long enough to reveal telling patterns. So on the next slide, I've included information from another job posting. Here, I've completed the steps of identifying the action words and then identifying the key words and phrases. And then finally, my third step to look for those patterns. Root words are counted and priorities emerge. In this case, my recommendation to the job seeker was to ensure that those 3 highest important words showed up prominently on the top third, or at least the top half of their resume. So that is how we go about targeting the resume. Any questions, Robin?
Actually, not at this point. I think everybody is just really geared in. They're listening. They're focusing intensely. So let's keep going.
I love it. Okay, folks. So resume basics. This is not a complete history, only a preview. It's like creating a movie trailer for your interview. When you're doing a resume, you want just enough to get the employer interested and wanting to know more. It should be quick and easy to read. There will be clear sections for their eyeballs to bounce through. And the accomplishment statements will not be written in full sentences. It's not an essay, it's a marketing document. So no I, me, or mine, no pronouns in the resume document. They will be essentially fragments, longer, detailed fragments. So remember, it is a fluid document and its purpose is to get you the interview. If it's not working, change it. I know you guys put in a lot of time and a lot of effort on these things, but ultimately, if it's not getting you those interviews, it's time to have it looked at, have somebody review it, and take or leave some of those changes, try something different. Now, in the chat box, I want you to take a guess at this question. How many seconds or minutes, on average, does an employer spend reviewing your resume the first time? "30 seconds, 6, 10, 15, 20, 30, 2 minutes, 10 seconds. All right, so most of you are kind of on the right path there. The answer is that it takes roughly 10 to 17 seconds for that first human eyeball to review your resume. So they're skimming, they're not usually reading. They're looking for those highlights, they're looking for those key qualifications and requirements. Okay? So let me explain what you're looking at here. This image comes from the ladders.com, a website for executive positions. This shows the heat from a recruiter's eyeballs as they moved over 2 different resumes. On the left, there are chunks of dense text and wide margins. On the right are clear and separate sections spaced out and spaced out text with some white space. Notice how the recruiter did not even finish reading or skimming the one on the left. In fact, you can see kind of over on the right here, I like to think that maybe they zoned out for a minute and were making their, because they just got tired of reading. Somebody really want to make sure you're telling them what they need to hear as far as those qualifications that you meet, those requirements that you meet in the way of your accomplishments. Right-hand side, it's clear that there are different sections, and you can see at the very bottom left that they spent a good amount of time or eyeball heat there to confirm the education of that applicant. All right, let's move on. So, making your resume scannable is very important, as most employers are using applicant tracking software or systems. So know that most applications will be scanned by that software during the first review of your resume before reaching a human eye. Be aware that fancy font can be misread by scanning software used by many organizations to first screen applicant documents. Applicant tracking software, otherwise known as ATS, can sometimes only read text. So make sure that you aren't using graphics, text boxes, anything fancy like that. Make sure that you speak their language. This is targeting the resume. If your previous employer terms the people you serve customers, but the employer whose job posting you're targeted uses the term guests, change that term on your resume. If they list a strong candidate will be detail-oriented as a qualification, change wording from high attention to detail to detail-oriented. Speak their language from their posting. Do some research around the application page for the ATS brand name, and then Google that ATS and see if you can find any tips on submitting a resume and application through that particular ATS. Okay, so resumes should always be honest. Inaccurate information could cost you your job later. So focus on skills and things that you've achieved or accomplished rather than just the tasks that you performed. Employers are more interested in results. So focus the resume on a particular job. If you try to include all of your experience and skills, you make it harder for the employer to imagine you in the position. For example, don't confuse them by putting forklift experience on a resume for a job at a restaurant. Targeting your resume to a particular job helps the employer see how qualified you are and increases the likelihood that you will be called for an interview. And remember, to job seekers, this is a selling tool. To employers, it can be a screening or elimination tool. Use keywords to stand out in applicant tracking systems that identify and eliminate interview candidates based on keywords, or more accurately, the lack thereof. So you want to choose a format that best presents your skills relative to the job posting you're targeting. The top third or half of the page is key. Make sure that the reader immediately sees your intention. Whatever you call this, it might be a professional job title, it might be an objective, it might be a profile or a summary statement. Whatever it is, it must grab the employer's attention during the first half of the page. Make sure you have a little white space. This can be done using some bullets. You want to avoid paragraphs. Those are dense chunks of text that can be reader fatigue inducing. You want to look at your margins. They can be up to a minimum of a ½ inch, but no more than an inch. And for easiest readability, use sizes 10 to 12 point font. Anything lower than that, and people are going to struggle to read it. No need to waste valuable space with that old line, references upon request. It's no longer trendy in resume fashion, and it's implied that you'll provide them if you are asked to do so. So unless the references are requested at the beginning, do not send them right away. Start with the basics, that application, the targeted cover letter, targeted resume, unless the advertisement calls for something additional. If references are requested, go ahead and place them on a separate sheet with the same name and contact block that you used on your cover letter and resume. All right, target every time, no matter what format you choose. So they can be done in a variety of ways, and there's no test on this, I like to say, but we just like to let you know that there's basically 3 different types: chronological, organized by history; functional, organized by skills; and a combination of the 2. So this might be what a chronological looks like. What they do is highlight most recent employment while de-emphasizing jobs held years ago. This is best for people with a consistent employment history and no gaps in employment. It may not be the best format for individuals with job gaps, recent graduates, or people who are changing careers. The recent work history should be consistent with the career goal in a chronological resume. And as a general rule or best practice, you want to use about 10 to 15 years of work history or the last 3 jobs. Now, this best practice does not work for everybody because we have plenty of people out there who have been lifers at their positions. So there's definitely exceptions to almost everything here. It really depends on your job history and where you'd like to go going forward. The functional resume, otherwise known as a skills resume, it really focuses on your skills and accomplishments in those different skill sets. This is recommended for new job seekers and sometimes for people doing a career shift. What I think is really popular is the combination of a chronological and functional. To me, my personal preference, it's the easiest to target to a specific job posting. Generally speaking, probably the most commonly used format after the recession and things. It allows you to focus the top 2/3 of the document on those accomplishments that are relative to your target, and it condenses the work history into a concise chronological list. So now we're going to look at some basic parts of a resume. So we've got the contact info, your name block. Use your full name, no nicknames. But if you go by a shortened version of your name, feel free to put that in there as we've done here with Elizabeth or Liz. Many agree that removing your street address is a good idea. Not only can it be a security concern for you, but it can also allow you to be geographically profiled. No doubt it will be required on the application. As a best practice, we encourage job seekers to pick one phone number to make it simpler for the prospective employer. Make certain it's the number that you use and answer most of the time. For most people, this will be a cell phone. There's no need to label it as such, but a phone number's use is implied by its format. So a label is just some added clutter that can distract from the essential information. So be aware of your outgoing voicemail message. Keep it professional. No ringback tones, no music, no Bible verses, and the like. First name, last name, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you for calling. That's all you need. Also with your email, keep that professional. Avoid any numbers that appear to be the year of your birth or graduation or something like that. Any 2-digit or 4-digit numbers within your email address can indicate age. If you are active and your profile is complete on LinkedIn and it's up to date, go ahead and include your LinkedIn profile link. Make sure that you have done the work to personalize this so there's not a bunch of numbers after your name. If you're not sure how to do that, please contact your local career force and staff will certainly help you do that. For those folks in the trades or something where they would like to have more of a portfolio to offer people, you could also use workhands.us or lots of other professional networking sites that are out there. All right, again, your intention might be titled objective, profile statement, summary statement. It might be just a title, but at any rate, it needs to be some sort of indication of the target of your resume. It should be very specific to the job posting that you're applying to. Avoid wordy statements that start with generic introductions such as seeking a challenging position with a growing company. Who does that phrase serve? Challenging, it's for you. Growing, that's for you. And remember that this intention needs to be specific to the employer and what they need. Remove any instances of I, me, or my from the resume. Avoid me-oriented words and phrases in general. Instead, offer the value the employer will gain by hiring you. For example, you could say seeking part-time position in the floral industry, offering experience in merchandise trimming and preparation at high standards with a record of always operating at the best interests of the employer in mind. This focuses on the employer and their needs versus saying, looking for a rewarding part-time job in the floral industry at a company with room for growth and advancement. Rewarding, advancement, that sings me, me, me. All right. So when you are listing your employment, make sure to list your most recent employment first and then work backwards in time. It could include volunteer experience, just indicate that properly, or you could always do a separate section for volunteer. List your most recent education first, and then again work backwards in time. If you have any college, you don't need to list high school. Education dates are optional. Know that education dates can suggest your age and how current your academic knowledge is. So take that into account and consider leaving education dates off the resume. Plus, you can bet that this detailed information will be likely required on an employer's application. Now, if you've just recently acquired a degree, if it's within maybe the 3 to 5 years, then that might be more important as far as more the significance that it holds to your value as an employee. So again, there's always an exception there to the best practice. But if the targeted position is unrelated to the subject that you studied, you could leave that off. So if you have a bachelor's in communications, but you are going for a bookkeeping position, you can just put a Bachelor of Arts and don't have to put in communications behind it. Again, if you're concerned about how you're listing that, please contact your staff at your local Career Force Center and they will help you with deciding how to list that. Go ahead and list training and continuing education if it is relevant to the job that you are seeking. Some other resume sections might include these listed here: the military, volunteer, leadership experience, professional memberships or affiliations, any recognition you received, and applicable or relevant training certificates. List those memberships if they are related to the job. Include any awards or recognition that you've received for your work professionally. Be cautious of including affiliations that could be polarizing. For example, anything political or religious. There are ways to list those things without being polarizing. So again, if you have any questions or if you're not sure about something, contact your nearest Career Force location staff and they will definitely help you out with that. So hobbies. Hobbies used to be on resumes to show that we are a well-rounded person. And you'll still see them if you start with a template out there somewhere. But these sections should typically be left off unless they are directly related to the target job. So if you love to read mysteries and you're applying at a bookstore, that makes sense. But if you love to whittle things out of wood and you're not applying to anything having to do with construction or wood working or anything like that, go ahead and leave that off. Quick break. What do we got, Robin?
Okay. All righty. We've actually do have several questions coming in. What I'm going to do, Marnie, is I'm just going to kind of read them off as chronologically here, and you take as many as you feel you want to before we get back into the text. So this goes back a few minutes ago, but we're talking about applications again. And here's the old bugaboo. They say all the applications I filled out always ask what your target income is. If it allows me to type the word, I just use open, but if I have to write numbers, the question is what scares them off?
Ah, okay. Well, that could be different for any industry or any person or personality, I suppose, as far as HR or hiring managers go. But I think what you're doing is correct as far as you've got the strategy of if I'm able to type in negotiable or open, that's what I'm typing in. If I have to put in a number or I have to pick from a drop-down box of ranges, then I want to make sure that it is a researched number. What I mean by that is you've gone to at least a couple different sites to get reliable information. So the one that we would recommend right up front is mn.gov/LMI. That's labor market information. We've got regional strategists throughout the state that do constant statistics on jobs in the different regions. And so if you cannot find the information, please again call your local Career Force location and ask staff to help you find that. We've all been trained on it, and if we have a hard time, we can always reach out to our statistic experts to get the answer for you. You can also go to salary.com. You can go to glassdoor.com and do that online research to find out what is a competitive wage range in your geographic area and considering your own expertise, education, and experience.
Next question. Is there a particular font that is better to use?
Definitely, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Any stick-like font without the little tails on the letters will help you get past the scanners without any issues.
And as long as we're talking about scanners, somebody follows up with, what about tables? I've heard that scanners have problems with tables.
They sure do. So if you are someone who likes to put lists in your resume, maybe bulleted, 9 bullets in 3 different columns or in a table or something, that can be very hard for a scanner to read. It may not read them at all. So then all the keywords that you've tried to hit within those lists would not be read. Again, if you have any questions on what's scannable and what's not scannable, go ahead and send your resume into your nearest location and have it reviewed.
Okay, we've got lots of questions here, Marnie, so I'll just ask one more here, and you let me know how long you want to go.
Sounds good.
It says, someone was looking at the resume templates you were showing, and they say, these resume templates seem to be longer than a page. Are modern resumes longer than one page?
All of those examples are one page. We will send them out to you as part of the follow-up with our speaker notes, the slide deck today, and then there's several additional attachments that we'll include, and that includes those. It can be a bugger to try to fit everything on one page, and it always seems like there's one line that goes down. You don't want to have a second page with just a little bit of space used. So definitely if you're in that kind of situation and you're struggling, please reach out to your local staff and have them help you. This is something that we do every day at work, and we're happy to help you with formatting things like that. There is it is more common to have a 1 or a 2-page resume. My personal feeling is that I get scared about the second page or more because I know how many seconds you have to grab the reader's attention. And although you wouldn't be penalized in an ATS for length, the ultimate goal is to have it read by a human eye. And I worry about that person finding what they need to see and not getting to that second page. All right, how about one more question, Robin?
Okay. If you were a lifer at your position, how do you address or acknowledge this head on? The person looking over your materials will certainly figure out anyway. So if you've got basically one job you've been in for 30 years, Marty, how would you show that on a page?
Absolutely. So we have an example of this as well. Our colleague Art Larson put something together that we'll send out to you. Um, Basically, what it includes is listing that employer and then listing the different roles that you had. Now, not everybody will have distinct, maybe different promotions or working in one branch or another, but there are ways to divide up your 30 years of work at a place. So again, this is kind of a personal or individual question that I would encourage you to contact your local staff about. Email them that resume, ask them about, what do you think of my work history here? Am I focusing on the right things to target this employer? And see what their opinion is. And you might end up having more of a phone conversation as well about it to really talk out strategy as far as how you're going to arrange things on the resume and really getting down to that science of targeting. Okay. So that can be definitely something that people worry about because when you've got so much experience, you can be considered overqualified or overpriced. So if that is a concern of yours, I would definitely try to follow up with employers to see if that's a valid concern that you can receive feedback on. A lot of times that's hard to get. So definitely reach out to your network and then of course reach out to that career force location to make sure that you are really targeting your resumes in order to get those interviews. All right, let's talk accomplishment statements. Ideally, when you are starting your accomplishment statements, you'll seek out different action words to begin each statement on the resume. Use the employer's action words on their job posting, letting them know that you speak their language. Examples of action words can be found in long, long lists online. Just Google resume action words or visit onetonline.org for ideas. That is one of my favorite online tools for resume creation and targeting. onetonline.org. In email reviews, I often will alphabetize accomplishment statements to highlight repeated action verbs. Because I want you to know that redundancy is often off-putting within resumes. It could be perceived as a sign of disorganization or lack of attention to detail. And sometimes those repeated action words could mean that you can combine statements, or you can try one of these items like right-clicking on the repeated word and check out the list of synonyms for ideas, or go to thesaurus.com, get some ideas there, or just again, Google resume action words. And again, you don't have to frantically write this stuff down. We will send you these speaker notes, and those website addresses like thesaurus.com are in there for you. All right. So using phrases like responsibilities included or responsible for do not add value to your resume, nor do they reveal your unique experience and contribution. They can even sound like they've been copied straight out of an internal position description from your last employer. So this is why we teach about accomplishment statements, also known as skill statements, impact statements, or power statements. Carefully crafted accomplishment statements are how you make yourself stand out from the other candidates by telling your own details of performing a skill or a task. So let me give you an example. When I'm assigned to the reception desk, one of my tasks is to answer phones. If I simply list that task, answered phones, on a resume, it does not tell the reader very much. My guess is that all of you out there can also answer a phone, right? And so anyone who's a candidate for a specific job that calls for answering phones would be able to as well. So to make it into an accomplishment statement, I need to add details. I could say, answered and appropriately directed phone calls on a 6-line switchboard for 5 partner agencies and 40 to 50 staff. So for the next slide, I want you to prepare by please opening, like a blank word processing document, or grab a writing utensil and a piece of paper. There will be 2 tasks listed. I want you to please prepare to rewrite, reword, and revise them into accomplishment statements. Then I want you to share them with us in the chat box. So the first one there is kept inventory. Keep in mind, you could write this about the inventory in your home kitchen. If you've never kept inventory at a job, if you've never had to call customers, reword it into a personal accomplishment just for this exercise. So as you work on that and submit it into the chat, let's review some accomplishment statement basics. Resume bullet points should be accomplishment statements, not just tasks or lists of duties. A combination of action, details, and results show your value. A laundry list of duties can equate to unsubstantiated claims that do not sell you. So work on building these statements that describe your unique experience, performing that duty, or exhibiting that skill. Strive to include specific details. Try adding numbers by quantifying things. This will enhance each statement and make it more effective. It tells you more about, or tells the reader more about you and your capacity, the volume you can handle, the variety of skills that you have. You can ask yourself those journalistic type questions about the task or the duty. Who, what, where, when, why, and how often. You could say demonstrated in what type of situation, project, system overhaul, software transition. You could explain why you, how often, how well, how many, roughly, what kind. You could say which included. You could say such as, and then include a couple of specifics by using a specific or particular system or software or technique. You can mention certain equipment, hand tool, motorized, clerical. So there's many ways that you can add a little bit more detail. If you are just, your brain is starving for details, it cannot recall them. We've all had those blocks. I like to go out to onetonline.org. It definitely gets the inspiration going and gets my mind turning. It will list equipment, it will list softwares, and of course it will help you with those action words as well. All right, so it looks like we've got lots of good ideas here. Remember that instead of using responsible for, you could always do ordered, tracked, and received inventory. Sometimes just flipping things like that will help you with rewriting these things. I'm glad that several of you have taken some time and come up with a few phrases or good statements there. This is definitely something that will help you as you write these accomplishment statements of your own and target that next job posting. So here's a couple of things that you might say in addition to what you've put in the chat box there. Writing and refining these accomplishment statements to target a requirement list in a job posting can be one of the most time-consuming tasks in resume building. However, you can take heart in knowing that all of the work that you're doing to build that effective, targeted resume is really preparing you for the interview. In fact, all of your job search activities are building blocks to that interview and your next job. So know that you are doing meaningful work as you take the time to carefully construct powerful accomplishment statements one by one. Do your best to draft these using the job posting as a guide, using onetonline.org to make sure you've done a comprehensive review of your previous work, and then go ahead and send your drafted resume along with the targeted job posting in for review. So in the follow-up, and I believe in the chat box, we can put the link to find your nearest location for CareerForce, and you can email that for resume review right into your local location. So remember that it only takes one error of spelling or grammar to take your resume out of the consideration pile. If you are simply if you're using more of a simple text program that does not have spell check, always try to paste your final product into Microsoft Word or another word processing software and run the grammar and spell check. Google Docs can be one. Using Microsoft OneNote, I believe it is, or
Grammarly.
Grammarly, thank you. All of those will help you. If your resume is not winning you interviews, have it reviewed. Basically, that's its job. It needs to get you interviews. And if it's not getting you interviews, please send it in for review and we can try to give you some strategy advice, some formatting ideas, and other things. Oh, and she's already pasted in there for you the location. So When you put in your zip code, you'll find at your closest one, when you click on them, you'll find their email address and their phone numbers. All right, let's do some more questions, Robin.
All righty. Okay, so someone says, I've heard that you should create a different email that you use when you are looking for jobs and employment. What's your thoughts on that?
This can be a great idea. In our career lab, where we have several computers and people in normal times come in and use them, I have seen people who have hundreds, if not thousands or tens of thousands of emails. If you are overwhelmed with an email inbox that looks like that, by all means, go ahead and create yourself a new email address just for your job search. Another reason to do so would be if you don't have a professional looking or sounding email address. If it's hotmama@hotmail.com or if it's cuddles22 at Gmail, that's something maybe that you use with friends and family, or something that you created in junior high or high school or college, and it no longer serves you as a professional in a professional setting. So by all means, then create another free email address.
Okay, I love the next question, Marnie, because I've never quite heard this take before, so I'm fascinated to hear what you say. This person says, I have seen that the objective statement is actually reflective of folks of a certain age, as it was a big deal in the 1990s. What do you think?
Sure. Yeah, I think
Is it,
that,
will it date you if you use an objective statement?
um, it depends on the reader. If you feel like that is something that you're worried about, then do not call it an objective statement. Um, like I said, you don't have to title it anything. You could do name block and then job title and then begin the resume. You could call it a summary statement. It still maybe reads like an accomplishment statement, but you could call it a summary or a profile. Um, if you have any preconceived notions about how something makes you appear, um, try this out. Go ahead and email it in to your local career force for a review. And after you get that review back, if you've gotten any feedback that gives you any indication that that's how you were perceived, then you know at least one person's take. Or maybe you didn't really get any feedback on that particular thing, and you need to call that reviewer and say, hey, just wondering, when you read this resume, do you think of me? Like, do you have a picture in your mind of what I might look like or something like that? It's my idea, Robin. What do you think?
I actually was, I got the advice from my mentor about 10 years ago that the objective statements were kind of outdated. She didn't say anything about the 90s, but she said, nah, they're not in vogue right now. However, she did suggest that I put an objective statement on mine because I was changing careers. And her advice to me was, looking at your resume quickly, they're not necessarily going to put the dots together. You need to address what you used to do and what you're choosing to go into and why you can do that right up front. So I think it is definitely, as Marnie has said, it's a case by case basis. And what she's suggesting is absolutely phenomenal because an objective statement might be very effective as a marketing tool for yourself.
Mm.
Let's see here. How do I put a certification I have taken from Coursera? Where do you
Ooh,
put that on a
yes.
resume?
Well, I guess it depends, as many things do in this business. It depends on your background and what your goal is and how you are arranging the rest of your document. You could put it at the very top because it's very timely and it's very relevant, and or you could put it at the bottom because it's not as relevant, but it shows that you've been doing some work, some self-improvement, um, some learning. Um, it really depends. You could put it under the education section. Um, If it's part of their qualifications or requirements, you could put it more towards the top or the middle. It just really depends on you, your situation, and the relevancy of that certificate.
Okay, what if the name of the university has changed since you graduated? Which should be used?
Um,
And this actually works for a former employer too, guys.
Absolutely, absolutely. You use the name or the title that is most accurate as far as your knowledge. Um, if a place has closed, that's okay. You put down their name. If they've merged and the new title is not as well known as the old one, we've definitely got businesses like that locally. Maybe you put company name and then in parentheses, formerly known as, or just put their old name there. Um, I would probably, as far as the education goes, I would use the most current title of the school. Um, I don't know, Robin, you got a take on that?
No, I think you've absolutely covered it. The thing that Marnie frequently advises people in her resume classes is think of the resume as a marketing document and ask yourself always how to tell my story most effectively. That's going to help you choose where you put this information. If you choose a class that, again, is not necessarily a big selling point for what you're going for, then decide whether you put it at the very end or whether you keep it out altogether. So just always ask a busy hiring manager with little time to take a look at this document, what do I need to include that's going to impress them in the shortest amount of time?
Right. Essential, relevant information. All right, Robin, we've got 5 minutes left. I'm going to go over these next slides and we'll see if we have any time at the end for any more questions.
Cool.
All right, so we want to briefly go over cover letters because we don't want you to skip this step. Yes, like objective statements, some people might say these are passé, they're obsolete, but we do teach as a best practice that this is another opportunity for you to sell yourself, for you to introduce yourself. And the one thing I like about it is that you get to use full sentences and talk like, a human person for a couple small paragraphs. So, as mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, please give yourself plenty of time when you're applying for a position. I will reiterate here that an average application may take around an hour to complete. Plus, you need a few hours to target your resume to the job posting. And I would limit your work on a short cover letter to maybe a half an hour, 45 minutes to draft. Although some say it's formally a formality, every resume needs to be accompanied by a cover letter. It's the right thing to do, and it just gives you another advantage. Whether they read it or not, we don't know, but take the opportunity if you are given that opportunity. Use the same name block and contact information as on your resume. Address the letter to a specific person whenever possible. Always try to find that individual's name to address the letter to. After you've exhausted all your research angles to find a name, you could default to Dear Hiring Manager. Each letter should be targeted towards the job posting and should not repeat anything from your resume. Remember that unlike the resume, this is a chance to write in full sentences and show off those skills. Try to avoid using too many sentences or starting too many sentences with I or my. Remember that the entire letter is about you by you, so no need to reiterate that fact with overuse of pronouns. So to be real honest, cover letters may or may not be read unless you're familiar with the person reviewing the application submissions and know their personal preferences and habits. You just have no idea. So just in case, do not repeat what's on your resume. Therefore, cover letters must be short, to the point, and be easily skimmed just like the resume. Maybe about 3 paragraphs in total, no more than 3 to 5 sentences each. Indicate how you will follow up with the employer whenever possible. And if you do this in your cover letter, make sure to mark it on your calendar and make that effort. Following up helps you stand out. And keeping your word, of course, is very important as a candidate. If asked, indicate your salary requirements in the form of a range that comes from your research of local competitive wages and your own expertise and education. Make sure that you proofread and edit your cover letter. You don't want any mistakes. All right. Thanks everyone for your attention and your participation today. We've got just 2 minutes left. We do want to say, please check out Coursera if you haven't already, and come again for the next job club next week, and interview and resumes later on this week.
And I wanted to apologize, but also give you guys an opportunity. I messed up and accidentally launched Marnie's normal resume class that she does. And normally we don't duplicate in a week, but Marnie is going to be back teaching another resume, slightly different, another resume class in 2 days. So if you're the kind of learner like I am, where you need to hear things a couple of times, please join us on Thursday.
Absolutely. And that's so common. When you're in the job seeker frame of mind, you might need to re-listen to some of these things. And we do have things recorded out there for you, which is even nicer because you can rewind or stop, write things down, change something on your resume as you're going. Again, we will send out information on the follow-up email, and then we can also include some of these links in the chat box. It is 11 o'clock. Thank you again for your time and attention and participation today. Bye-bye.